Did you know we have a doctor on today's episode?
Actually, John Maye is a script doctor, not a medical doctor.
That's okay. Maybe he can fix my dislocated storyline.
Maybe a prescription to cure us of these bad jokes.
Oh, lovely. If the Sherpa keeps writing them, there is no cure. Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is being brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now Mr. Bruce will lead you into the Sherpa Chalet. As a reminder, throwing water balloons, or people, off the cliffs, is strictly prohibited.
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa.
Hey there, rebels of the Sherpalution, and welcome to Too Many Podcasts. It's me. You know who I am, and if you don't, then you're not paying attention. But you know who you should be paying attention to? My guest today.
Who's our guest today, Sherpa?
His name is John Maye, and he's a guy who hosts a podcast called the Binge-Watchers Podcast. And John has had some experience writing for Hollywood as a script doctor, as you heard in the beginning of the program. But he'll tell us the story of how everything evolved into his current podcast. And it's really enjoyable, too. He's definitely got a lot of knowledge about movies, which I think that you will enjoy. So let's head on down and have a listen to my conversation with John Maye of the Binge-Watchers Podcast. Hello, Rebels. We are here in the Sherpa Chalet on the conference room with Mr. John Maye, and he is the host of the Binge-Watchers Podcast. So are you binge-watching? Well, then this is the podcast that you should be listening to. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jim?
Good. Welcome to the show. Now, you actually had a background in filmmaking.
That's correct, yeah. Mostly directing, screenwriting, done some acting, a lot of independent stuff. Cleaned up a lot of scripts, actually. Working in development, you end up helping some of the big guys out, working behind the scenes. They call it script doctoring, but it's like a credit that's unwritten. You're not credited as the writer, but you spend a lot of time fixing scripts. So that was kind of like what helped pay to get me through film school. And then went out on my own, developed some TV shows with the Seinfeld guys. Actually, there's if you love Seinfeld, there's two Larrys on there. Actually, there's Larry David, right, who has his own show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, that everybody loves on HBO. There's another David who's a director. Well, Larry Charles. Sorry, not another David, another Larry. Larry Charles is a director and has worked with like Sacha Baron Cohen on a bunch of movies, right? He actually was developing a show with me, and that's kind of like what people know me mostly from. And then I went on to do some more writing. I was looking for a creative outlet, and the Binge-Watchers Podcast sprang to life, and it's been going strong ever since.
You've been doing it for a while, too, right?
Yeah, 7 years.
Well, that's a good long time.
Yeah.
So has it evolved a lot from the time that you first started it, or you kind of kept a consistent pattern with your shows and your style and everything like that?
Well, the idea was to bring the love of like staying up all night watching movies with your friends to like the podcast scene, and then have listeners who are also binge watchers get in contact with us and talk about their experiences watching movies late at night, and kind of be like a little bit of film history, little news about the industry, and then kind of bring like our perspective from having worked in the industry. And you hear about the Bruce Willises or the Will Smiths, like these extremely Warren Beatty, like these extremely successful actors, but you don't hear about the guys that are just paying their rent. You know what I mean? Sure. They're working in the background. They're working on a couple TV shows, and they're like the 9-to-5ers of the film world. And we were those guys. And so it was like we were just trying to get by. And I was like, I would love to have a way to explain to like regular people, because my family and friends outside the industry didn't really understand, like, why can't John pay his rent this month? Oh, because the TV show we were working on got canceled. you know right. What I mean? And people outside of that world don't know what it feels like just to do the 9-to-5 thing and still be eating like, 89-cent can of spaghetti. And they wonder why you can't drive around in a Rolls Royce, because there's a working class that's the backbone of the industry that nobody really knows about. So Binge Watchers kind of evolved out of that feeling of frustration of people not really understanding what it took you to survive in Hollywood. in the early 2000s, and then also the aspirations that you had, and also the movies that you love, like things that you had grown up with and that you wanted to revisit, and what those movies mean to you. It's kind of like when you pick out like your favorite record, right? And you play something like it could be Elvis, and it could be Blue Christmas, and that you remember that, I remember, and it's like I remember how I first heard that song. It was a Christmas with my parents, and we were making Christmas ham or something, and so there's a memory associated with that event, right?
Sure.
For some of us, movies are just like that. We remember when we saw the movie the first time, what we were doing, what the movie means to us. And so those are the kind of stories that we celebrate and tell on my show.
Now, where did you grow up originally?
I grew up in Baldwin Park, California, and I spent a little bit of time in Arizona and went back to California to go to college. So little town, Parker, Arizona. I don't know how many of your listeners will be familiar with this area, but most people know where like Havasu is. It's on the Arizona-California border, sorry. And the Colorado River flows through the town. So it's got a little riverside area. It's tribal land. So I grew up on one of the reservations down there. And the town's also there. And it's kind of like it's an economically depressed area, but because of the river activity, there's a lot of like tourist sports and stuff that goes on. It's kind of like a resort area, kind of.
When you were a kid, do you remember like your parents taking you to like a drive-in or something like that? Do you remember your first drive-in experience, or they didn't do it so much out there?
Well, I remember not necessarily the drive-in, but I remember like of all the stupid things, like I was earning some money at a little weekend, like cleaning people's yards in the trailer park where I lived, right? So I could take this girl. I must have been in third or fourth grade. We took this girl to go see Hook, which is a movie with Robin Williams. Mm-hmm. We had like a 2-screen theater in my hometown, right? So there was like one movie for kids, one movie for grown-ups, and I remember it being a big deal because it was like the first time that I took a girl to the movie theaters, and that was the movie that was playing was Hook with Robin Williams, So that's what I remember, that kind of thing. And then I remember I remember like badly wanting to get involved in like making movies and acting and the magic of it all. And I got a chance to be on a radio station. It was country AM radio, 1380 AM with the amazing man, Keith. Every Saturday morning, they used to have this thing called Dare Kids Hour, right? So they ran a local contest, and it was all about what Dare Kids is, like drugs resistance and alcohol awareness or something. And it was like basically keeping kids clean, right? So, but they would do a little hour where they would do a trivia hour. So I actually got to go on and co-host the local trivia hour to kids my age. Then I remember going to school the next Monday and being kind of like a 7th grade celebrity, right? I would like go to lunch and be like, "Oh, we heard you, joking on the radio," and they're like, "Do you get paid? Do you get paid?" I'm like, "Get paid? No, I get Airheads. They pay me in candy." You know what I mean? Hey, but when you're 12, man, candy is currency, So what are you gonna do?
Did you use that as a bargaining chip when you started script doctoring? You got to pay me more than a bag of Airheads.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. There's a lot of work for experience, or we'll give you credit kind of jobs, in film school. Yeah, I mean that'd be kind of funny to leverage the stuff at the radio station. Like, hey.
What do you think elevates certain filmmakers faster than others? Do you think that there's just that certain quality that they have in their movies, or it's just somebody kind of designates them like you're going to be the next big thing?
No, actually, I mean one of the hardest lessons I had to learn when I first started out was not everybody actually loved movies the way that I love movies. To them, it wasn't something that they were in love with or an art form. It's really a product. So you have to identify the product, be able to sell the product, know how you can sell the product. And if you can't convince a studio executive that this product can be sold, how they can sell it, what kind of actors they need to sell this movie, where it's getting sold, how it's getting sold, how much it costs to make. There's a lot of math, and then but there's also a lot of flukes where the planning doesn't matter, because then you will have somebody that gets out there like a Kardashian, and you're like, okay, well I don't see the talent there, but they're famous. You know what I mean? So they'll end up on the roster, and they'll make millions of dollars, and it's outside of that whole scenario where you plan this movie's going to cost $34 million. What kind of actors do we need to put in it? What's the risk? That's the boring stuff, but that's really what sits down. Like I remember working for some producers in the beginning on like movies like Thank You for Smoking and Alpha Dog and Copying Beethoven. And there was a Jackie Chan movie called Forbidden Kingdom, which is, are you familiar with like Chinese mythology where they talk about Journey into the West as like this novel that's like 2,000 years old? and they have a character called Sun Wukong, who's the Monkey King.
Okay.
And in the 80s, they developed that into a cartoon called Dragon Ball, and now there's Dragon Ball Z. And yeah, so that's in Japan, but they based it on the same Chinese legend, right? Forbidden Kingdom is like Jackie Chan and Jet Li's version of the Adventures of the Monkey King. It's the same character that they developed into that Dragon Ball cartoon. And sometimes it's like you're not just selling one movie, you have to sell like a block of properties, and you have to take risks, but then also explain what they're gonna get on the other end.
So you got to show that there's a market for it.
Yeah, exactly. There's got to be a market for it, and to me that was like kind of a shock, because they're like, yeah, you can have a great story, John, but everybody who walks through the door has a great story. There's 10,000 me's. There's 10,000 movie fans banging on the gates of the studio, looking to get a 4-picture deal. They don't do that anymore, but sometimes, I mean, people get now like 2 or 3, or they get development deals and they're working on either a few films, but everything's like Netflix now, which is more series related. A lot of series stuff is going on, but. Oh no, I was just gonna finish that thought just by saying, like, it's not exactly what you expect, and that was the hardest lesson for me to learn at the beginning, was just that not everybody does it because they love it. To a lot of people, it's a business, and it's just something like commodities or stock trading, and to some of the less exciting aspects, it's like flipping burgers, but it's just you're moving equipment on a soundstage.
So if you had your choice to create something out of something that you've written, what type of genre would you want one of your movies to be? Is there a big first love?
I'm in horror films or comedies or a mashup of the two. That's kind of where I live. That's and where I've done well. I do have one script that's done pretty well. It's one. It was like did well in the Austin Film Festival. It's won the Screencraft Horror Awards. It has made its round a couple of times. There's a Academy Award sponsored Nichols Fellowship of Screenwriting contest they do every year. I've been the guy. Like, I've been the contest kid for several years running, and I'm sitting here going, all right, make the movie already. You know what I mean? Like, forget the awards.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's make the movie. So yeah, I have a couple passion projects I'd like to see still get made, but I've mostly gotten paid through screenwriting by just kind of working on other people's material.
Was there a certain movie that when you saw when you were younger that made you really decide this is what I want to do?
Yeah, Wizard of Oz.
Really?
Frank Capra's Wizard of Oz. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's an interesting choice too, especially, I mean, you're a young guy.
Yeah.
To rely on classic Hollywood like that.
I absorb the movies I watch, and for me, it was kind of like the dreamy sequence where it comes when they're getting pollinated by the flowers, and then the flying monkeys are attacking them, right? And my two favorite characters are the Cowardly Lion and also the Tin Man, and I kind of flip back and forth to who I relate with most. But those two characters are really riveting to me. But I know, Dorothy's a strong character. Obviously, that's whose journey we follow in the movie. But all around, I feel like it's a really great movie, and it was the first one that really sparked an interest in me to go pursue it. And then, like I said, seeing things like Hook, I've always been engaged in these fantastic movies, right? Even the He-Man movie from the 80s with Dolph Lundgren, I love. Masters of the Universe. So you do know what I mean? Which was like a canon release, and everybody kind of like gives canon a hard time, but they were putting out all the B movies in the 80s, like mostly action stuff, right? Cyborg, that kind of thing, with Van Damme. But and I love all the Predators. I love Aliens, all that stuff. So as far as when I was a kid, it was like the Blues Brothers, Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters, and a couple of other things. And what was interesting to see people like John Candy, like in Spaceballs, to see like somebody that was, because I'm a bigger guy, to see somebody that was like kind of established, but people were paying attention to him, and he was like a lead in a couple movies like Uncle Buck, and to see a guy like that and do well, I'm like, wow, I can go do that. Or to see like John Belushi cutting a rug in Blues Brothers, which is like if you're talking about American music history, I recommend that movie to a lot of people. You got like 4 or 5 generations of blues musicians in that movie. That's like history on film, and I'm like, you have to start there. You know what I mean? Like, sure. If you want to find out about American blues and you're not really an inductee to it, you just go watch Blues Brothers, man. They're on a mission from God. Watch the movie. It's great. It's got Dan Aykroyd. Talking about Skip Mods in the police car and how much he doesn't like Illinois Nazis. So it's very entertaining.
Didn't it have one of the biggest car chases? Or what was it, the most cars wrecked or something like that?
Yeah, at the time they had like a chase scene over a river bridge, and then they had like the stuff into the city, and they wanted to draw. I mean, I'm not sure what came out first, French Connection or this movie, but yeah, there was a really intense, different ways to mount the cameras to the cars, and they had some pretty elaborate chase scenes. Don't quote me on that part because I don't remember which one came out first. I don't know which one influenced the other, but they drive through a mall in Blues Brothers, if I remember correctly. They drive through like a closed down mall in the Midwest, and it's a pretty incredible sequence. Yeah, really, really interesting stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about the Binge-Watchers podcast. You were saying that you do a lot of themes.
Yeah, it's again, I don't know when exactly this thing's going to drop, but it's summer 2020 right now. So what we're doing is all summer long, we're doing a horror movie marathon called Summer Slash, where we pretend that we're stuck in a chair and are forced to watch these really weird horror films, right? Like we have to watch a series of the weirdest, worstest, bloodiest, goriest, crazy things coming down the pipeline. And we go back and get stuff out of the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And then we have like a list that we have to follow for the marathon. And so we'll watch those all summer and evaluate those films and review them. And then we'll change the theme up after the summertime. We'll be moving on. We have these series that run are basically month-long series that all have themes. But we'll do Summer Slash. Then we'll move into Weird September, and we're actually covering sci-fi films. And then we'll move into feel-good movies because it'll be like almost the holiday season. So then we'll move into things that make people feel good, comfort movies. That's an idea of how that scenario plays out.
And you do talk to different people in the field, and
we had a Scream Queen on recently named Rebecca Love, who's done all kinds of stuff. She's done horror films as well as B movies and adult material. Actually, she's an adult film star, but she came on when we were doing our Dead on Demand series. We were reviewing these movies that come out of Shudder.com. I don't know if you're familiar with that website. They do it's like a horror movie website actually.
And they're sponsoring you now, right?
Yeah, we did pick them up as a sponsor, but obviously I'm not going to plug them on your show. That's
okay.
They do support us, and we love their platform. If you're a horror movie lover, they got a lot of great stuff on there, and including they brought back a journalist from Texas who used to do you were talking about drive-ins. A guy that really loved the drive-ins is Joe Bob Briggs. Mm-hmm. They actually gave him a new show. He used to do Monster Vision back in the late 80s, early 90s on TNT, TBS. In the middle of the night, he would watch these really weird movies with giant ants and spiders and slasher films that, have the worst titles. but he's a fun dude, and they gave him a show. So he's on there. So there's stuff that's mainstream, but also stuff that's really weird. And yeah, it's just one of the things we're up to.
Are there any specific actors that you really like, or any ones that you try and avoid like the plague when you see their movies?
What can I say without getting in trouble?
You could just say no.
Yeah, because I have one foot in that world and one foot out. But sometimes things circle back to me. But let's see. There were auditions actually to play John Belushi, and there was a John Belushi movie that was going to come out.
Okay,
and there were a few names that were getting kicked around. I can't say I don't want to give myself too much credit. I don't want to say my name is getting kicked around, but my name was considered. But they were going to go with this guy whose name is Email Hirsch, and it's always been kind of a stick in my craw that he was going to get the part. You know what I mean? Nothing personal against the guy. I just I didn't think that he should be John Belushi in the John Belushi movie. But there's also another guy named what's his name? Joshua Jackson, who's pretty good for my generation. And Jonah Hill, I think, does a lot of the movies that I think that I could do, so I can kind of relate to the funny movies that he does. Seth Rogen and all those guys, they just seem like guys that I could work with. I haven't, but I feel like we'd be in the same kind of mix of filmmakers.
So if you were Belushi, can you do the eyebrow thing? I know this is audio, but he can do it, folks.
That's a prerequisite, right?
That's right. That's probably the first thing that they ask you. Let me see your eyebrows for a second.
Yeah, that and the harmonica, which is, I have it. I don't know where it is, but it's somewhere around here. I was working at a trade show one time, and they asked me to put it away because I was playing it too much backstage. But I was trying to keep the pipes warmed up because I had to go announce contest winners, right? I was working this real estate event, and I'm like, well, I don't want to fall asleep back here just waiting in the wings, So I started playing it, and it was too loud. And they're like, I'll put it away. It's too early for that. I'm like, it's never too early. It's never too early to play a little harmonica, a little, pick up everybody's spirits, a little jazz, I want to say the South, but everybody hates the South. But it's a good instrument. So.
Having being a screenwriter and a script doctor as well, is there a way for people to know what movie is probably going to be good before they see it? You think that there's any kind of tip-offs if you're watching a preview, like when you're at the movies and stuff like that, like, well, this is going to be good or this is going to just fall apart? Do you get a sense of it when you're at the movies?
Yeah, I definitely can, but I want to feel like it's something that you learn, because you learn how they edit videos, you learn how they edit movies together, you see how they market properties. Some things are marketed incorrectly, but you can generally tell. You can generally tell within 30 seconds of watching a movie trailer. If you have a trained eye and ear for this kind of thing, you definitely know within like 30 to 45 seconds how well the movie's going to do. The tip-off is usually if they use a lot of music at the beginning of a trailer, more music than actual content, less dialogue. If they're distracting you by flashy, if they're just trying to distract you with the hype and the glamour of the movie, as opposed to a couple genuine scenes, if they give you 2 scenes in the trailer that are conversation, the movie might be okay. If it's all a music video, you're in trouble. And if it's a lot of words on screen very fast, and they're overplaying how famous the people are in it, you might be in trouble. The movie trailers that tell you a story, right? Like you feel like you've seen the movie in a couple minutes, and it might ruin some parts of the movie, but the ones that take the time to tell you a story in a couple minutes are probably going to be okay. Worth your time, at least worth a rental that costs you a couple bucks.
I've hated when you see the trailers for movies and it turns out that what you've seen was probably like the best part of the whole movie and everything else was either boring or just horribly written or whatever. And you're just like, no.
Well, what's funny about like comedies is the jokes that get cut on the editing room floor end up in the trailer. So you might see a deleted scene and think it's the funniest joke in the movie. Go to the movie theaters. You're waiting for that moment, and it never comes. And you're like, wait a minute, what happened? You know what I mean? But I hear what you're saying. On the other hand, what if they ruin like a key element of like the third act where you find out who the alien is and you realize you know who the alien is because you saw the trailer and they ruined it. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, that's the guy. There's the guy with the bomb right there. He's right there. We already know this guy. We didn't have to look for him for an hour and a half because we already, Mr. Steve, who's going to end the world. We saw him at the beginning of the trailer. Now, we know everything's happening.
My wife and I have a running joke. The first movie that we ever saw together was a movie called The Family Stone, and it had Sarah Jessica Parker in it. And the way that it was promoted was it was this happy Christmas comedy, and there was funny things going on. So I asked her, I said, was there a movie that you'd like to see? And we went to go see it. And this movie was so sad through 90% of it. The thing that you saw in the preview was maybe like 2 minutes out of the movie. And it was like...
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and she said, I'm sorry. She said, I thought this was going to be a fun comedy movie. Yeah. I said, I was waiting to laugh too. I said, I saw that same commercial. And it just didn't have to, whenever it's on TV, we're like, oh, look, it's our favorite comedy.
Well, there's one movie that's actually pretty good. Doesn't get a lot of credit. It's a movie that came out with Vince Vaughn and Ben Stiller called The Watch. They were originally going to release it as The Neighborhood Watch. It's a science fiction thing, right? Where the Neighborhood Watch actually takes on aliens that are infiltrating the neighborhood. When they're marketing the movie, they didn't know if they should market it as a comedy or a science fiction film. So it's almost like it came and went, and nobody realized that maybe they should tune into this type of movie. Same thing happened. Are you familiar with a movie called Galaxy Quest? It's like a spoof on
Tim
Star
Allen?
Trek. Yeah, Tim Allen, exactly.
Okay.
Have you seen that movie?
I've never seen but I know what you're talking about.
Okay. So yeah, it has like a cult following now. People really love the movie. When it came out, it was a total flop. It bombed at the box office, came and went. And it had a great cast. It had Alan Rickman, who was like the famous villain from Die Hard, right?
Sure.
Hans Gruber, and it was like, as you said, Tim Allen. It had Sigourney Weaver, right? It had Tony Shalhoub, who actually played Monk on the USA series as the weird detective that has a bunch of quirks, right? So it had a great, yeah, exactly. It had like an amazing cast, and it should have been a hit. And it had a better story than most of those types of movies coming out in the 90s at the time had. I think it came out like in 99 maybe, or 98 or 99. Maybe a little earlier than that. It's a great movie. But again, they didn't know when it came out. Is this an action movie or is this a comedy? And they didn't really sell it very well as either. And then it took like life on the shelves as a DVD rental to get a following. And then now there's a documentary about it. And they have like these retrospective screenings. at like the Beverly and the Egyptian Theater, and people they usually do like the Q&As, right? And they do all the conventions about it. And then, I mean, and again, it all goes back to the marketing. Sometimes they don't know how to present the movie. It's also hard to sell your movie if you can't convince the studio what your movie is. If you can't explain it in a book report, like a lot of producers, your first job as an intern is to take the script that's 120 pages or 95 pages, and your boss is the producer. He's considering making this movie, and young kid coming out of college to think that there's all these wet behind the ears young adults out there that their job can make or break a movie based on the 4-page book report they make out of a 120-page script.
Being a movie lover, what is your thought on movie theaters? Do you think that they're going to become a thing of the past and that streaming is just the way to go? Or
I couldn't believe that AMC got into it with like, was it Warner Brothers? They got into it with another studio of like getting these movies. Oh, maybe it was Universal. Like Universal's like, okay, we're everybody's on lockdown, so our movies are going to go right to on demand. And they were talking about one of their movies doing really well, and then AMC was like arguing that they need to be included and da 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 da. And I was like, that's pretty bold for AMC to take that approach. And I feel like for movie theaters to stay open, it has to be more than just sitting down in a room watching the movie, right? Some films are designed to see on a giant screen. I mean, they're made with these giant cameras. Like Quentin Tarantino makes a movie that's this Western. What was it? The Hateful Eight. He did this Western movie, right? And he shot it on anamorphic film. It's like almost 40 millimeters or something. And so he's like, well, you got to see it on this screen because it's the size of the film and da 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 da. I can understand that. Like, if you don't see it in the right presentation format, you're not getting the scope of the story, right? It's like when they did the pan and scan. Do you remember how like they used to put things down to like television aspect ratios, and so it was like cutting off the edges of the what you were actually seeing in the picture, and people were like, wait a minute, like we're missing like half the image. And then they found out how to put the widescreens out on VHS, and then they did the widescreen anamorphic stuff to all the DVDs and then Blu-rays, etc. Now Ultra 4K or whatever it is these days. So there is something to say in respect to presentation. But honestly, I love that I can just, if I want to find a movie, you can go to the internet and you can find it relatively, except for things that maybe haven't got a digital release. Mm-hmm. Like forever, there was a BMX movie from the 80s called Rad about a bunch of bicycle racers, right? And kids that were into BMX bikes. And forever, people were passing that movie around on bootleg VHSs and DVDs that they made themselves, because for 25 years, nobody's had a copy of this movie. They every once in a while will throw it up on YouTube till YouTube takes it down, or they'll put it somewhere on a website. But now they finally were going to do a 4K restoration. So now they finally put that out. Now it's widely available. The theater should switch to these more like communal spaces, I think. Like what we missed from the days of the video stores is that there was a sense of community. Like if you walked into a video store, the video store guys were fairly knowledgeable about the different genres. Could you get you excited about a movie? You could hang out for a little while with movie lovers, other people that were in the store, and you could talk about movies. So I feel like theaters have to kind of shift. Like Alamo Drafthouse, I don't know if you're familiar with them, out of Austin, does like a whole presentation where they show you things related to the movie that you're about to watch. You do like food and drinks, and then they have like little trivia games and stuff that happens before and after the movie. So I think making like making some kind of event out of the whole situation is probably the way to go. Otherwise, things change and theaters will just be gone, and it'll be unfortunately a memory or something encapsulated in a museum. But everything changes, right? And it seems like things change a lot faster now. But about every 10 years or so, things change, and it's harder to keep up. There's definitely things that you love that you want to keep. Like I enjoy going to my closet and looking at my DVDs, right? But that goes back to the triggering the memory, the nostalgia. What was John doing when he bought this copy of Blast from the Past with Brendan Fraser, right? Oh, had just broken up with the girlfriend. This movie made me feel better about that. Here it is in my DVD collection to touch and admire and remember and think about. But again, it's just nostalgia. So if we're talking about like what big business should do, they need to move with the way everybody wants. The consumers want it. And right now they want it at their fingertips at light speed.
And unfortunately, that audience experience is starting to go away too. Because I remember there were certain movies that you would see, like the ones that come to mind off the top of my head were like Animal House and Jaws and Star Wars and the first Rocky movie. And you saw those movies in a crowded theater and everybody cheered together. Everybody was laughing and like that roar. And you became part of that, whether you wanted to or not. You were like, I'm laughing because everybody else is laughing and this is funny. And it kind of sinks in the whole crowd experience. Like you all kind of become like of one mind while you're watching the movie.
Yeah, the last time I felt like that was actually the last Star Wars, the Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a woman who was like an older fan, but she clearly knew her Star Wars because she was reacting to all the same things I was reacting to, right? You know, C-3PO, the golden droid, he was threatened in one of the movies and we're like, you know, like we're hushing at the same time and we're feeling it. We're in sync with each other. Now, was the entire audience like that? No. There was like these kids, they must have been 13, 14, 15. They were just repeating the reviews that they read on YouTube. You know, 2 rows behind us. So they weren't even experiencing the same movie. You know what I mean? They were just reading the reviews and playing it back like gospel, and that's how they were interpreting the movie. So that feeling you're describing, I think, for the most part, unfortunately, is lost.
I know. Very, very sad. Also, I was thinking, I just realized another one, something about Mary, where I've never heard an audience laugh so much. That House were probably the 2 movies where I never remember just like an audience just losing it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, you see like Matt Dillon play a villain in a movie like that with Cameron Diaz and then Ben Stiller. I mean, he's just being Ben Stiller, but that movie's actually like considered like a contemporary classic, right? Because it did things a little outside of the box, especially for comedy. Like comedies for that time were kind of tame. When that came out, it launched into this whole thing of like these new raunchy mainstream comedies that were acceptable, you know, even with really families to go see. It's kind of really funny, ridiculous. Everybody knows that movie, you know, and that's Fairly Brothers. And they did like Me, Myself, and Irene with Jim Carrey and a slew of other things, right? Yeah, I mean, it is possible. I mean, there are some movies that will bring everybody together. Like actually, what was a phenomenon last year, and I got sucked into it myself, was the Lady Gaga movie. That
Star is
she did
Born.
with Star is Born.
Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, with Bradley Cooper, and it's like a remake of like A Star is Born has been made like 3 or 4 times now.
Right.
But I thought the movie was incredible. I thought they were gonna fall in love in real life. That's how intensely I believe the passion in that movie. Right. It's up for awards, right? And you know they took the show on the road for a little while. And some movies are magnets. Some movies can actually draw people in. Actually. Do you like Andrew Dice Clay? Because he's in that movie. He plays Lady Gaga's dad.
I didn't even realize it was him at first.
Yeah.
And Dave Chappelle is in that too.
Yeah, that's true. He plays the friend of what's his name's character. Bradley Cooper's like it's like one of his longtime friends in the movie. Mm-hmm. Folks, if you're out there and you don't know this movie, you should look it up. It's pretty good actually. Yeah. What kinds of movies do you think your listeners watch?
Oh, well, I get a pretty wide audience, I think. So it's kind of hard to say, you know. I think everybody just kind of has their tastes. And, you know, I've had a couple of other movie people on the podcast, and it's different stories and perspectives and stuff like that. I like what Yeah, I really like what you're bringing to the rebels out there. So they're kind of checking it out. So when you're not binge watching movies and checking out your DVDs, are there any podcasts that you like to listen to?
Not really.
Okay. So maybe I'll let you know when this one comes on then, John.
Yeah. No, I'll definitely check your show. No, I listen to podcasts, but I'm just so consumed with producing one that I don't get to listen to things as much as I would like to anymore. And I'm kind of following the majors. Like I'm looking at what Joe Rogan did. He just closed that deal with Spotify. You know, I'm looking at stuff like that. I'm looking at like what the industry is doing. I used to listen to Justin Long, who's another actor, has a podcast right now, and it's all about finding the good moments in the worst of times. And I think that's a pretty good podcast. I do listen to his. I listen to a lot of music related stuff. There's another horror centric podcast called Last Podcast on the Left. I like what those guys are doing. How Did This Get Made is kind of funny. And that's all really funny because they review some of the movies that I actually like that are like guilty pleasures of mine, but they hate them. But it's funny to hear them talk about them. And then I support the independents. Like it's really what's unfortunate is like a lot of the independent podcasts are not as well promoted. So you really have to like search and find them or hear about them. And then it's like, word of mouth, and then you go listen to their shows, and they're great, and they're really interesting. There's a podcast that just talks about like true crime stuff related to like musicians, and there was like something about Van Morrissey when he was like where he was hanging out when he was getting that recording that song and stuff like that. So that was pretty interesting. There's a company called Wondery who puts out pretty good podcasts, and they did like the history of Jaws last summer. They were doing like all the history of Jaws, and that was pretty interesting. So yeah, I mean, I come across things. It's like reading a book. It's like I don't have time to listen to a lot of things these days. If I'm not researching something for a show or like meeting new people for the show, it's like my decompression time or my personal time to just sit back and listen to podcasts is like somewhere between midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's really hard to narrow it down. And I just have a couple things that are in my phone, and I listen to. I'm a show skipper. If I'm being truthfully honest, I skip from show to show, just depending on it could be the artwork that attracts me, could be the episode descriptions, could be the category that I'm checking out. I could be in comedy and then jump over to movies and see what's going on. But I mean, I don't have like a top 10 or anything like that.
Well, that's what this show does. I mean, we bring in, people that have podcasts that people may not have heard of, or if they cover unique topics or whatever. And we just bring you into the Sherpa Chalet.
Yeah.
Before I talk about your self-promotion, what are some of your guilty pleasures for movies?
There's a movie called Fool's Gold with Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It's like a blink and you miss it romantic comedy. It's called Fool's Gold, right? Okay. And so that's one of them. There's a soccer movie with Will Ferrell called Kicking and Screaming, which is actually a kids movie, but it's ridiculous. I love it. And, a lot of people don't like Highlander 2. I like the Highlander 2 cut where they're not aliens. I like the cut where they're actually just from a different time, but they're not. Do you know about this movie?
No.
Highlander 2?
No.
Okay, but are you familiar with the Highlander series in general with Christopher Lambert? Like they're mortals, and there's the Gathering, and there's only so many of them, and they fight each other, and like
I heard the general gist of it. I've never seen it though.
Yeah. So and it has Sean Connery, and Sean Connery's playing a Spaniard, and it makes no sense at all. He's very Scottish, but he's playing a Spaniard. But in one version of part 2, they're supposed to be aliens from another planet that are banished to Earth. Then there's another version called the Renegade version, and that's just they're from the future and they're sent back to the past. And then the thing called the Gathering starts between all these immortals, right? Where they have to fight each other, gain each other's powers, and then one of them's supposed to be the king at the end of all this stuff, right? So that's probably an extreme guilty pleasure, is the Renegade cut of Highlander 2,
Okay. All right. So we do have this portion of the show, and it's called Shameless Self-Promotion, and you can let our listeners know where they can get in touch with you and follow you on social media.
Shameless self-promotion.
Yeah, I guess the best place to find me would be bwpodcast.com. Also, if you Google search Binge-Watchers Podcast, you should be able to find all of our stuff. And I'm fairly active on social media as well. You can go to the Binge-Watchers Facebook page or follow Real John T. Maye on Instagram. And then all my links will be there. Like magic, just a tree that sprinkles everything everywhere. You just follow the branches.
His name is John Maye, and he hosts the Binge-Watchers Podcast. And hopefully our technology will not fall apart before the next time we get in touch with each other.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, John.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim. It was a lot of fun.
And now it's time for Sherpa Suggestions.
For this week's Sherpa Suggestions, of course, you can check out John's podcast, the Binge-Watchers Podcast. And also, don't forget to check out a podcast from one of my previous guests, Natalia Bai, Kane and Tal at the Movies. Really good podcast. Also, some other stuff that you might want to check out would be NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour, Film Spotting, Now Playing, Mad About Movies, The Dead Meat Podcast. Yes, it's horror movies. It's not a butcher show. Lights, Camera, Barstool. Classic Movie Musts. The Plot Thickens, which is a Turner Classic Movies podcast. Who Shot Ya? And Raiders of the Lost Podcast. I hope there's no snakes in that podcast. I don't like snakes. Thanks so much for listening to Too Many Podcasts. And of course, a thank you to Mr. John May, and check out his podcast, the Binge-Watchers Podcast, and maybe you can binge on the Binge-Watchers Podcast. Next week, it's going to be a special week. 5 days of shows, some Sherpa selects, meaning some shows that we've heard before, and some brand new shows. And the theme next week, it's going to be amazing women, incredible stories. Yes, 5 days of interviews with lady podcasters and women who have stories to tell. I don't get a lot of women on the show, unfortunately. And sometimes things get canceled and they don't work out. And I just definitely wanted to highlight some of these incredible ladies who've been on the show. And I hope that you will all enjoy them. You can follow this show on social media. Just use the word, what's the word? Sherpalution, not grease. Grease is the word, but Sherpalution is the word. If you want to follow this show on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you know the drill. And where can you hear the show? You know where you can hear the show too. It is on any podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcasts or iHeartRadio, Pandora, Anchor FM, Spotify. They're all there. And so is this show, Too Many Podcasts. So don't forget to check it out. So in the meantime, Mr. Bruce, I think I've just finished up my popcorn and we're ready to escort everybody to the door. So if you don't mind grabbing the door and showing them all out, I would greatly appreciate it, sir. So we'll see you guys next week. Viva la Sherpalution.
Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpalution. Viva la Sherpalution. Oh. Yeah, I'll come back now, you hear?